In his recent opening of Parliament speech, President Ramaphosa outlined a litany of key priorities for the 7th administration, some of which will require new policy thinking, while others will require the settling and operationalization of existing policies and tools in the state apparatus. Are these the right priorities with actionable mechanisms, or is it yet another cocktail of platitudes amounting to inaction and policy paralysis? Public policy analyst TK Pooe of the Wits School of Governance joins me for this. TK, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. The president outlined 12 key priorities for this administration. It's a lot. As one particular politician said, if everything is a priority in government, then nothing is a priority. So one has to ask, are these the right set of priorities?
Evening, and thanks for having me. Look, I think on the face of it, they all seem right, but like I think the quote that you used from Mr. Musi, my mind is correct in saying, listen, and I wrote about an article in this saying, listen, you can only pick 2 or 3 things, and I know sometimes that's going to be the hard part, but that's why you have leadership, and that's why public policy at the end of the day is about making hard decisions. And the reason I say this is just based on 2 things. One is limited constraints on our resources. The 12 points which I raised, we really don't have the bandwidth financially and also human capital-wise to be able to achieve everything. And then secondly, we also have to look at the condition that this current state is in. For instance, when we speak about we want to do more in terms of expanding jobs, well, it's good, but the state is not the only player in creating jobs. You need the private sector, that needs to believe your plans, that needs to believe in your institutions. And as we found out over the last 5 years, they don't necessarily believe in the government. If anything, we have what I term is called the quasi-state, the quasi-private state, where a lot of private entities are doing many of the things that government should be doing. So I think if they really prioritize 1 or 2, 3 things, I think this would be a better approach as opposed to going for 12 when you really know there's no mechanisms to be able to do this.
Yeah. And these priorities, do they have actionable mechanics? For instance, the first is economic growth and job creation. The president's celebration of job creation and his proven mechanism is the presidential stimulus, employment stimulus program, which employed, he says, created 2 million, my apologies, job opportunities in the last administration. Nobody seems to buy this as a true marker of success on job creation, as largely these are jobs created in the government and not really jobs created by the private sector. Is there any original thinking about solving the jobs crisis and stimulating economic growth that is inclusive?
Unfortunately not, and this goes on for the last 10 years, because I think we have to also remember there's even a tweaking of a terminology. Instead of saying job creation outright, there's now this term called of jobs opportunity, which is a very, it's a befuddling way of saying, well, listen, it means a half measure, we can or we cannot measure it. Look, at the end of the day, there's no genius plan to creating employment, right? At the end, the world over, whether you're in China, whether you're in the United States, jobs are created by the private sector, and the private sector will let you know what they need. And what South Africa's key problem has been that, one, we've not been able to bring the private sector and the public sector together on key projects. One of the points I made in my article is to say, look, we speak about industrialization. We are probably one of the largest exporters of raw minerals in the world. Yet what we tend to do is we dig them out of the ground. Even that we've been struggling in because of energy and the constraints of our railways, and we export them to the world. If then the state was in a position to be able to say, listen, we're going to create mass employment, because again, employment in South Africa takes 2 forms. There's mass employment for people who've got post-university degrees, but in the main, most people don't have university or even technical diplomas. Where we need jobs, and this is where the state has been struggling, it's for people who have just basically got a matric and below. And the best way to do this is to have industrialization. And what we've seen over the years, we've documented it. You don't really, we're saying scientifically, not what even government's own reports tell you that this is where they've been struggling. So again, there's no magic formula the world over. Everybody knows that you need the private sector and the publics to come together. Yeah. There needs to be an environment. And unfortunately, this is what we've been failing is over the last 15 years.
One of the arguments you make around moving the speed and needle on policy implementation is to consolidate a number of our large metros into bigger metros and giving them more policy autonomy to be able to enact the necessary reform to their specific needs. What about that could potentially find expression in this administration? We've heard the Minister of Cooperative Governance, Velenkosi Nihlabisa, say that municipalities that can't get their act together will be dissolved and they have to go to a fresh election so that a new administration can be elected for them. That seems to be a threat to municipalities to get their act together, but can they do it without the freedom of being able to put together a policy framework for themselves in their unique circumstances that works?
No, thanks for citing that. Look, and again, that's the problem. Look, it's not about councils at the end of the day. That's not the issue. The issue is about, do the municipalities that currently exist, are they actually economically viable? And the point I was making in the article is to say we need to actually cut down on over the 257 municipalities we have. And part of the cutting down is to actually have about an expanded metros. And I'll use the example of Joburg, right, in Gauteng. It makes no sense to have a city of Joburg and a city of Tshwane. I mean, we just basically, it's not even a border. There's not even a hard border. So it's about combining resources. As I said previously, we don't have that much money anymore in South Africa where we can be able to come up with experiments like we used to. So what we need to do is consolidate those resources and actually give these metros the ability to say, listen, on issues of transport, on issues of bulk infrastructure, go out, raise funds, because they've got the ability to do that, and they've been given the designation to be able to do that. But in return, what we need to ask of them is expand, take over other municipalities, so that we actually have about 8 or 9 metros, which could almost operate as special economic zones, or what I term mini Singaporean cities. And this is, I think, would be a whole lot better, and would attract the right types of people. And then it would actually give national government the opportunity in a reduced environment of municipalities to be able to work with municipalities in rural South Africa, because those are the key municipalities that really do need first-hand intervention. And provincial governments simply cannot do that. It needs to be national government, along with the private sector, coming in to say, look, how do we actually bolster places like Mahikeng? How do we bolster places like the Vembe district in Limpopo, so that we can actually turn them around to be economically viable? So councils really don't play much of a role here. We just need to change the whole architecture completely.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time and your insights, TK. Really do appreciate it. TK Pooe, who's a public policy analyst at the Wits School of Governance.